The whole idea of the Biosphere Reserve is that it's about promotion of sustainable living. And that brings into account not just the birds and the bees and the peatlands, but what kind of energy sources there are, what kind of renewable energy makes sense. And the Biosphere Reserve, which is a very different thing. Of course, biodiversity is an important core component, but it's only one component. It's about promotion of sustainable living for people and nature. And that's what's missing in the current debate. It's all about that. It's all being twisted towards biodiversity. And so things like renewable energy discussions and other forms of sustainable living are being left on the wayside instead of being included in this overall discussion. For me, history is really important as to how these things happen. They didn't just happen overnight. They happened because some people put a lot of work in. And, you know, for a minister to convince his department, which is all about economics, that actually this thing that looks a bit green is actually helpful was quite significant. The fact that the Biosphere Reserve is about being sustainable, and that means being sustainable in the sea, being sustainable on the land. It means that business, farmers, ordinary people in their houses all have to work together to keep the Biosphere Reserve going as an effective place to live for both people and nature. And that involves looking at novel forms of renewable energy, examining the whole energy equation. At what point do you stop using non-renewable energy? Clearly, the Isle of Man has got huge potential for renewables. And that's actually, it's very interesting. That's a key debate right now in Australia because, you know, we have all this coal, which we want to sell, but it's not, I mean, that all is in the negative ledger against our climate change objectives. So really globally, people are thinking about this, and the Isle of Man still, to my mind, is a perfect example of how this can work, and this can be shown in a very model situation. It's the same way as the telecom companies used to use the Isle of Man as the test bed for, you know, early rollout of fiber, rollout of mobile, and so on. It's the Isle of Man somehow is like a mini Britain in in form, and that's good. Unfortunately, by way of circumstances, I've never had the chance to meet Professor Curran, but you know, his work I know is really good, and the kind of things that he was doing were really excellent in setting up the debate on climate change. And I think it's a pity that some of that is actually, again, fallen by the wayside. It's not been properly grasped by government. And I mean, some of it, yeah, it's not easy, but hey, you know, this is, if we're going to make it, if we're actually going to make it to 2100, we have to do some serious stuff. That would absolutely be the way that the UNESCO process would look at a periodic review, which is due in 2026. A plan that is saying that the island is moving towards a renewable future. I mean, frankly, debates on whether, you know, wind farms are, you know, a problem for landscape view or seascape view, these are nonsense arguments. I mean, we're actually talking about human survivability. We're not talking about pretty pictures. We're really talking about serious stuff. And there's the natural resources of the Isle of Man can provide all its energy, including solar. I mean, solar is not a negative thing, I would have thought, on the Isle of Man. I think if the private sector is not formally brought into the picture and does some of the heavy lifting, it will not happen. My view is that whatever country or jurisdiction you're talking about, governments are no longer capable of actually delivering the solutions that are needed. They can frame policies, but they can't deliver the solutions in the way which they were doing in the last 100, 200 years. Private sector is the one place that can do that. Yeah, I think for me, being positive is the key always. Yeah. It's interesting. I've just been at a half-day seminar where for a group at the Australian National University, and mainly academics, obviously, and so you know, a lot of them about 2/3 of them were really fairly negative, and this and this and this, and then a third of them were actually really positive, saying we cannot have this negative mindset, because otherwise we're not going to be able to achieve things. And there are things we can achieve. Yes, there are problems, don't deny the problems, but hey, don't deny the opportunities either.